Because I think we can often get stuck in the, oh, if I had only made a better decision, or I should have known better. You can't foresee everything that's going to happen.
Right.
You do the best with the information you have. It's tricky.
Finding it within yourself to keep going despite that hardness and difficulty, I think that is resilience.
Welcome back to In Residence. I'm Keith.
And I'm Laura.
Hey, Laura.
Hey, Keith.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing well. What's been going on with you?
We have been watching the Olympics.
Oh, yeah, they started.
They did. So we've been watching some of the different competitions yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
So I got up this morning and put that on right away with coffee. Kind of fun to watch what's going on.
Yeah, I like sport.
Yes, me too. How about you? What's going on with you?
Had an eye appointment last week and that went well. Apparently my eyes got a little better.
Ooh.
I'm sure that's like the quiet before the storm where they start changing again.
That's good. I think I have an eye appointment coming up and I think mine have gotten worse. Maybe we're just swapping.
I think you do more reading than me.
Yeah.
I'm on the computer quite a bit, but it's not as much reading. I do more listening. So I'm starting to get a little nervous about my hearing. And so I might have to go get that checked. Other than that, I'm sore from working out, which is a good thing.
Yeah, your triceps are barking.
Yeah, and my lats too. But before that kicked in, we went swimming, and so that was fun. Cool off a little bit and just have a good time with you and the kids.
Yeah. I don't know if I told you yesterday we went swimming and I did laps. And the kids were making all the waves in the pool. Oh, I was like, y'all, I'm taking on water. You got to stop.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, they should be having fun. But I got some laps in yesterday, which was nice. I used to do laps a lot growing up.
We'll have to watch some swimming in the Olympics.
The United States won a gold medal in the relay, in freestyle relay. Just kind of fun. I just like watching them do the turns, and I don't even know what it's called. I know there's an official word, but they kind of flip her off, the wall.
Once they push off the wall, they wiggle under the water and go really far, it seems like. Yeah.
So cool. I try and do that, and I'm just not. I'm not an Olympian. I've been listening to the Wiser Than Me podcast, and I've been bouncing around between the seasons, and I found an episode that I hadn't listened to in season 1, the one with Julie Andrews. I knew that at a certain point in her life, she had to stop singing.
She had nodes, right?
Well,
like really bad.
What's interesting is they talked about that. She did have nodes, and that just made it painful, but it was more like they were just overused. She kind of said if you hop on one leg a lot, eventually that knee is going to just wear out. And so you can't continue to just hop on that knee. Mm-hmm. I couldn't imagine being at that place in my life where there's something that you're known for. You really enjoy doing it. You have not a lot of choice between just stop doing it. So she had to make that choice. She said it was hard. But from that, she found a relationship with her daughter and was able to deepen that through writing and other things. Although at first there was a real sense of loss, she discovered something that was even more beautiful. Even though she still misses it, she wouldn't change anything.
It's like something that's out of her control, right? Like the damage was done and you can't go back in time and undo it.
Right.
So her being able to move forward and leave part of her identity behind.
Right.
Like that takes fortitude and awareness and a drive to not simply sit in that. And I guess it kind of bringing up regret, like we talked about last time, because I think we can often get stuck in the, oh, if I had only made a better decision, or I should have known better, that's come up in probably lots of different areas of my life.
Has it?
Yeah. It's like, oh, geez, why did I do that? Or I should have known better. Or you can't foresee everything that's going to happen.
Right.
You do the best with the information you have. It's tricky. I mean, she had to change her singing style too, like when she started singing again, right?
Mm-hmm.
Resilience.
like that you have brought it to resilience.
Yeah. Well, it came up today too. It's actually sitting here in my dictionary app. I looked that up
Really?
again.
Resilience?
Yeah, resilient.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
In the weekly planning session that I go to, it comes up a lot. It's super important, but I brush up against it a little bit, and there's something about it that I had to look it up just to make sure I was understanding, but it's able to withstand or recover quickly from difficult conditions.
Mm.
Things like that. See if you can guess what I'm going to say should pair with resilience. Grace.
Mm-hmm.
The grace and compassion for yourself, it keeps coming up. When that's in tandem with these hard things that we have to do, I think that's the multiplier that's going to help us keep going forward. And maybe that's what Julie Andrews found.
Is some grace.
Yeah. Because it gotta be so hard it's so hard when like the universe says no to you.
Mm. Yeah.
And it's out of your control some of the times. Like, and if you get into the shoulda, coulda, wouldas of if I had only done more vocal rest, if I had drank this, if I had done this type of therapy, but you can't know everything, and you don't always have all those resources at your disposal.
And you don't know that's going to turn out that way.
Exactly.
Resilience, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that one day you wake up and you go, oh, okay, I'm over it. I have been resilient.
Right.
And I am now ready to move on with my new world, right? It doesn't happen that way always, typically. Yeah, I guess it could. I don't know if it's ever happened that way for me.
I think it's better to think of it as like I'm practicing resilience, and I'm going to keep getting those repetitions in. Just like I'm so sore still from reps in the gym, but it's going to make me stronger, and it's going to make it easier the next time.
I carry stress from day to day, so much of it in my shoulders and my shoulder blades that they're just knots upon knots. I don't know if that's a thing, but it feels like there's knots upon knots, and it's just like a brick wall. So today I went and got a massage. Even that, it's almost me trying to put in some, I don't know if it's a protective factor, but it's something that helps me get through and become more resilient to stress by taking a little time to address some of that physical manifestation of stress?
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's exactly being resilient, but it's me trying to do some of the things that I know can help me bounce back and be ready.
Yeah. I mean, implementing self-care and finding time to recuperate will allow you to get back at it. And like we call it re-entry, right? Like if we're even like if we're usually talking about that when we're going out and having fun, and then like, okay, we gotta dial it back in, and we gotta come in for landing here. We're re-entering the atmosphere, you know.
I remember we would go on a weekend away, you know, when the kids were like 2 and 4, like lots of energy, a ball of energy, just bouncing from room to room. And we'd go on a weekend away. It was often right to Green Bay to a Packer game or Door County.
Yeah.
And we'd be driving back across the state, and we get to about Eau Claire and be like, okay, you ready for re-entry? I'd always try and talk you into going out for one last supper out.
And I'm like, can we just go home?
I'm like, can we just have one more beer without the kids?
Yeah. Oh, funny.
I love them dearly, but they were young, and it was a lot.
Oh,
as as other
they were
parents
young,
might know.
And we were young in parenthood.
That is true.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about being resilient, I know that there's been a couple times in my life, and you'll know these because you were along the ride with me. I was going after an opportunity, and it didn't turn out the way I thought. In particular, there's been some really cool jobs that I've gone after that I thought, oh, I can move to the West Coast, or, I could move somewhere else in the state. And the opportunity didn't come to fruition. At the moment, it feels disappointing I almost said devastating. I don't know if devastating, that's a pretty heavy.
Well, it could, right?
Yeah.
And then that's where I would maybe come in and be like, okay, let's acknowledge these feelings, but also let's put them in perspective, and then maybe shift from devastated to disappointed, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing that we've talked about, is like, let's not go too high and let's not go too low,
Right.
you know?
But you
Disappointed is probably a little more.
probably better, more measured.
Right. But that takes work.
It does. And thinking about those opportunities that I was so excited about and wanted to have come to fruition and then have them not, looking back at my journey, I don't know how it would have been a part of it. I don't know if it would have made sense.
I mean, so is that, well, if it's meant to be, it would have happened. And that, so I guess it wasn't meant to be.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not so much like sour grapes, right? Like, oh,
No,
that
gosh, no.
probably would have been great anyway.
You
You know?
No, it's not. No, it's not sour grapes. It's more of a, well, maybe that just wasn't for me right now.
Yeah. I mean, that's been your mindset for several years now.
Oh, yeah.
When opportunities come up, being able to look at it from multiple perspectives and accept that this may not work out, but you're always really good at going for the opportunity and creating the possibility. And then being aware of, well, there's a possibility it might go this way, and there's a possibility it might go that way.
Yeah.
And it's going to be, is kind of what I've said to you before.
Yeah. I feel like that helps me just go with the flow a little bit and not get so tied up into it having to be a certain way.
There's something with going with the flow that I'm trying to navigate in my head, and knowing when to be aware and when to be ambitious. You know, going with the flow versus making something happen. Because going with the flow, you might be safe, but you also might get smashed into a bunch of rocks and rapids. The river flows where it's going to flow.
Yeah.
It's not always just a lazy river.
Well, even on a lazy river, I mean, you go on one of those on an inner tube, how many times do you accidentally kick someone with your feet because you're getting spun around? I mean, it's not even that fast, but all of a sudden you're like, oops, sorry, kicking you there.
And you get stuck under the waterfall, right?
Oh, that's always me.
So anyway, what were you going to say?
Well, we were talking about before we pressed record about something that we're trying to do with the podcast. Well, you're trying to figure out. I can't own that because you're like our tech guy. So you're looking at options of how to video record us while we're doing the podcast.
Yeah.
You were talking about some things I think make a lot of sense and align with what we're talking about today around things that you want to do, but also going with the flow, but not wanting to be stuck. And so I thought maybe it would be helpful to talk a little bit about that.
It's been on my mind to record video for a long time. And I've been hesitant and hiding from it because it's uncomfortable. And yet that is a signal to me that I should go ahead with it and make it happen. So, I mean, you can go on YouTube. I can go on there and I can spend days researching. And I have. And I research and I look at this, I look at that. And even though I'm not looking to spend a lot of money, I still get stuck looking at what's the best camera to use? What's the best this? And then all of a sudden I find myself looking at these things. I'm like, wait, hold on. I have 4 or 5 cameras already in the version of old phones, and they're fine.
Or current phones.
Yep, exactly. And I have software that allows me to use them and use multiple of them. And it's not professional setup and all this stuff, but it doesn't need to be. And I know this, and I've heard it before, and everybody will say, yep, if you have the time and the money and the resources to invest in this type of equipment, go for it. You won't be disappointed. $1,000 cameras and this and that and lighting. And at the same time, they'll be like, but the best thing is the thing you have right now in your hand, and it's probably in your pocket right now. It's your phone. So I've been doing that and playing with that, right? And I'm still kind of stuck in the research mode, but closer and closer. I think maybe next week it'll be video. Well, we're going to record. I'm not sure when that video will come out, because that'll be interesting, is adding another layer of something else to edit. Yeah.
I think it's something that you and I are both aware of, our tendencies. And one thing you were talking about that impressed me, you were talking about learning and researching, and you were a little disappointed we wouldn't be ready to do it this week. You really wanted to hold yourself accountable for doing it this week.
Yeah. Because it's been months of it being in the back of my head and not taking the necessary action steps to be as close as I am right now. But it's still like, it's that thing of like, oh, the should have, would have, could have. If I had only experimented with this a few months ago, or what was I waiting for? You're like,
Right.
those voices start to come up. And I was doing some testing and stuff. And even last night, we were talking about the balancing of when you're working and when you need time to pull back.
Right.
That helps you be more resilient if you can take some time off, like we've talked about before, simply enjoying yourself. So some of the things that I like to do, I can listen to stuff while I'm doing it. So I was listening to a YouTube video last night, and they said that same thing. You've probably got all the tools you need right now to get started, and better as you go, but simply starting is the best thing to do. So that was a nice reminder.
Yeah.
You were down here yesterday too, I think, when I was working on it a little bit.
Yeah.
It's not like I wasn't working on it, but it's always nice to get a little more of like a little affirmation, or a little bit like, yep, you're on the right track, even though you never know if you are.
Right.
I was looking at all the different types of software to live stream or record interviews and stuff, and Zoom type stuff. All of a sudden I just realized, like, I have a free software that'll do this. How about I figure that out?
Yeah.
and just play with it. So I'm trying to take more action. Movement leads to momentum for me.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, like, the more actions I take, the more momentum I get.
Yep.
I'm sure I've said that a billion times on here, but it's a good reminder for me.
So what happens if we end up video recording and it doesn't go well? Then what? How do we bounce back from that?
Oh, just do it again. I mean, that's the nice thing now. Like, that won't be so devastating. It'll be disappointing, but at least it won't be so uncertain. It'll be like, oh, whoops, I forgot to press that button and now everything sounds horrible and I can't use this, or that was out of focus. Like, that's fine.
You're starting to build up kind of your expertise or your reps.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest reason that it hasn't happened already is the uncertainty, right? The fear of being seen, and what if people don't like me, or what if this, or what if that? Letting go of that, and I haven't, right? Like, or else it would have been done already.
Right.
Yeah. So, like, the bouncing back is, I think, just acknowledging that we are resilient, and that when things don't go well, that doesn't make us just wave the white flag. People like us that do things like this, sometimes things go wrong. One of the things that came up in my writing today when I was reflecting and thinking of how my week went, the research came up. I spent quite a bit of time on some different things, like researching how to do something. I was looking for, how do I learn to do something good enough on my way to better? And it pushes against my tendencies of perfectionism that I've been pushing past, right?
Right.
Getting away from hesitancy that comes with, it has to be the best, it has to be right. That kind of popped up as like a little bit of a theme, because I'm researching because I know I don't know everything and I'm not exactly sure how it's going to turn out, but can it be good enough? And then, like you were just saying, if it doesn't work, I'll simply come back and try to make it better.
Drip by drip, right? A little bit at a time. And you always have the opportunity to adjust. Kind of like how I garden. I try something, it doesn't work. So example, the romaine lettuce we had, I let it go to the point where it is bolting. So now it's all bitter. and tall, ugly looking spears instead of lettuce heads. Yesterday when I was gardening and weeding, I pulled those out. I gave them to the bunnies and I planted some more seeds. I'm like, okay, we're going to try this again. We got some leaves off him, but now I know kind of, okay, I have to be more proactive at harvesting the leaves so they don't get to that point. Keep them watered, keep them healthy.
So you know how to get it to grow.
I do know how to get it to grow.
And so better is going to be actually harvesting.
Yeah, I think everything I harvested I gave to my mom. I sent her home with some raspberries and some romaine lettuce, but I don't think we didn't get any of it because then it started getting taller and taller and bitter. I did harvest some radishes.
Yeah, I bit into one the other night. Kind of crunchy.
But that's something new I haven't tried before. I learned even from that I need to thin them more because there are some that were growing next to each other like little, like almost mini carrots, because they didn't have enough room to turn into little balls like radishes are supposed to be. It's good to just learn. Try it slightly different next time.
It's iterative, right?
I love that, iterative. I find that to be a really powerful tool in my toolbox. It's better to do something incremental, it's iterative, and then learn from it, then modify and do that thing again until you get it how you like it, than to just not get off the starting blocks.
I was thinking of something very similar to like what you were just describing. It's like I can get bogged down in the tasks and the chores sometimes, but I can also get stuck thinking of the idea and, ooh, it would be amazing if I could do that. And I just think about it. And it's kind of two different parts of like a project. You have to have vision and an idea and an aim of where you're going. And then you also have to go and do kind of the boring, mundane chores and tasks that accomplish the goals. And I'm learning how to balance that. Like, is it 20% vision and 80% just working it and iterating? I wonder if your balance of that is just a little more ideal than mine, because you tend to have a really good idea of the goals you're trying to accomplish, as well as these tasks simply need to get done. These need a little more forethought and a little more communication than these ones. I mean, I know you just have a lot of experience with projects in your career. You work with lots of different groups and you head a lot of different groups and facilitate conversations. That's something I need to work on, which is transitioning between the action steps, the planning process, and like the strategy, and being able to flow between those a little bit.
You need to know where you're going and what that vision is before you get into the weeds with the action steps. Because if you don't know where you're going, you aren't going to be clear-headed about what to prioritize first in your action steps. So last weekend, we bottled beer. And there's a lot of tasky things to do with that. But the ultimate goal was to have a couple dozen bottles of beer from the big fermentation bucket into the bottles. Was kind of where we were headed. And some of the tasks that I knew had to happen, one of them in particular was sanitize everything. That's one thing people have told me and I've read. Sanitize everything. But it's kind of mundane, right? You have the no rinse sanitizer. You have to do every single beer bottle, every single tube, every single spout. Knowing where I wanted to head, I was able to say, okay, this is tasky, but this is the first step. And if I can get this done and get everything drying and draining off, I can watch some of the race. I can hang out with you while we wait to be able to bottle it. It was one of those knowing, okay, that's where I need to head. And it helps me with projects too. In particular, at work, say I have 5-10 different things on my plate. I really have to sometimes take a step back and think through, okay, what are those biggest things that are going to help me save time, create efficiency, get me closer to my big strategic goals that I need to make movement on, that need to happen before all of the more tasky things like responding to emails, approving time cards. I mean, those are all important. They have to happen. But to make time and space for that vision work to help you then prioritize what it is you're going to do and pay the most attention to is really helpful. Resilience, I always think, is something that happens after a big traumatic thing. But I don't know if it needs to be a big traumatic thing. Like, think about Julie Andrews, who after being a singer for her entire life, all of a sudden being told, you can no longer do this, or you're going to have some real physical limitations. And to come back from that, that feels resilient. Maybe me having a hard day on a Tuesday and coming back on Wednesday, being willing to do it all again. Is that resilience?
Absolutely.
Or is it mini resilience or
Micro resilience?
Is it micro resilience?
Yeah.
We all have those days when you don't necessarily want to get up and carpe diem the next day, but we do it anyway.
Why?
I mean, that's a good question. I mean, sometimes you do it anyway if it's related to work because you like being able to have the money to support your lifestyle. Like sometimes I think you do it anyway because this is who I am. I get back up and I keep moving forward because this is what I want to do. Because this is who I am.
That sounds like drive. Like in my head, doing chores to a standard, right? Like cleaning the dishes a certain way, folding laundry a certain way, like to the extent that you weed the garden, right?
Mm-hmm.
You do it a certain way because you have a drive to do it that way. I'm driven to do a task a certain way.
Oh.
Like my particularness.
Maybe it is drive, but maybe that's where tying resilience to something that is bigger than just a hard day. Like, I think what I'm talking about is experiencing something that's hard and finding it within yourself to keep going despite that hardness and difficulty. I think that is resilience.
Yeah.
But when you talk about I had a bad day and I show up anyway to do it again and just try and do it a little better or different, I don't know if that's drive or if that's resilience. Maybe it depends on what happened the day before. So like if you're working in a difficult place and you're having multiple bad days, I think that's a difficult condition, something more persistent. Likening a bad day where you don't like your job to something like losing your ability to sing when it's part of your identity, is that also a little simplifying the magnitude of somebody's difficult condition? It can mean something different for every person. What I'm trying to say is that there's such a large range of what that experience could be, and that I also don't want to minimize some of those life-changing, life-altering things that people really have to dig in and be resilient because of. Does that make sense? And maybe it is a bad day. I'm just saying sometimes I think resilience, like that word, often indicates to me that the difficulty is bigger than one bad day. Like people that have experienced really deep loss saying this thing that I lost is the same as Laura has a bad Tuesday at work. She's frustrated when she gets home. She gets up and goes to work on Wednesday. Laura was resilient. Like, yes, and resilient might be losing your job and getting back up and entering the workforce again. Resilience is saying after you, like Julie Andrews, you lost your voice, ability to sing, you're known for your singing, you're going to keep moving forward and finding something else. Losing someone you love and finding ways to still find joy in your day-to-day life, even though you miss them terribly. You're moving forward when something big happens that's negative and difficult. When I say that I had a bad Tuesday and I get back up and I go to work on Wednesday, is that too small of a example to say I'm resilient? I feel like yes, but maybe resilient isn't having one bad day and getting up and doing it again on Tuesday and still showing up. Maybe it's a bigger change and shift and difficulty and finding a way to traverse forward. But I don't want to minimize that a bad Tuesday and getting up and going on Wednesday isn't a good thing to do or hard to do, because it is. Trying to be very thoughtful about knowing that a lot of things that people are overcoming are really difficult, and they're the only ones that know how difficult that thing is. I don't label myself resilient because I get up on a Wednesday, even though I had a hard Tuesday. But that doesn't mean that isn't very real for someone else.
Yeah.
And so if somebody's day is hard and they label themselves being resilient, that's good. For me, I just don't know, is resilient the right word for that? Maybe it is. That's all I was trying to say.
Yeah.
I mean, bringing it back to the Olympics, there are a lot of stories of experiencing things that were difficult and seeing athletes showing up, overcoming the obstacles, and being at the Olympics. It's just a good reminder for all of us that we are capable of more than we know. When things don't go the way you think they should, be there for yourself and don't be afraid to write your own story. We can do hard things and keep moving forward.
Yeah. Be curious. Find tools that help you. They're out there.
Yeah. Be proud of who you are and know that your journey is uniquely yours and has made you who you are.
All right. We get out of here?
I think so. Do you want to do a quote today?
Sure.
So we're going to pull a card from our affirmation deck. We'll read it and say, why do we need to hear this message today? Mine is, nobody has a better vision of who you are than yourself, by Sheryl Crow. I love that. We've actually been talking a little bit about that, the importance of vision today, and how much I like to make sure I know what the vision is. And so I think that's really powerful to think about the vision of who I am, that I have the best idea of who that is for me. Thanks, Sheryl Crow. How about you?
There is absolutely no reason for being rushed along with the rush. Everybody should be free to go slow. Robert Frost. Something I've been thinking about for a few months. Like, what's my pace? So, thinking about that tonight.
I like that.
Anything else?
No, I think that's it.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Yeah. Sometimes you get knocked down. But you get up again. Ain't nothing going to keep me down.
Oh.
Impressing you with my music knowledge.
You're not, though.
I know.